Hello and welcome to the No Balls Podcast. I'm your host, Patrick McDonald. This is the seventh episode of the NBA Offseason Podcast. I'm here with my co-host, Sheldon Kaufman. Here we're starting back up with the little brother of the New York, the Brooklyn Nets. Um, this, you know, everybody, when you're talking about teams in New York, everybody's a Knicks fan. Nobody's a Nets fan. Uh, Yeah, I had to get that off as a Knicks fan. I had to say that real quick. What do you have to say on the Nets before we get the show started?
Um, yeah, they're kind of a pathetic team, but we'll get into it. I think you pretty much summed it up, being the little brother of New York,
Yeah.
of the
Um
Knicks.
and the trade this off season all but confirms that. Anyway, we're going to get forward to why they had to make some of those trades. 2024, this was not a good team. 32 and 50. This is their first full season after the KD and Kyrie era, or saga, I think is the better way to describe it. Um, they were 11th in the Eastern Conference, missed the play-in game entirely. 34 and 48 Pythagorean expected record, slightly better, but still not good at all. At home, they were 20 and 21, and on the road, they were 12 and 29. Um, then, so pre All Star game, this is when they had their former head coach, Jacques Vaughn, 21 and 33 pre All Star game, and then 11 and 17 post All Star game with Kevin Oliver as their interim head coach. So, with both coaches, they were not very good. Um, Interesting one here: 24 and 28 versus the East, and then 8 and 22 versus the West. In clutch games, they were 15 and 20, and then in other games, they were 17 and 30. Anything on just record stuff with the Nets? Uh,
Not really. They were just pretty much a terrible team all around. Indicative with the numbers. So
yeah,
yeah, you pretty much touched all the bases there.
and then the numbers will also show it. This was a team that looks like they were entering a rebuild, having an interim coach midway through the season. Um, if we want to talk about the whole head coaching saga of the recent Nets teams, the back in 2019 to 2020, they had Kenny Atkinson. He was a pretty solid head coach. KD and Kyrie forced him out. They wanted Steve Nash. Then probably a year later, they realized Steve Nash sucked,
Yeah.
and then they forced Steve Nash out. They end up with Jacques Vaughn as the interim head coach. I thought he did a fine job, but then obviously this season they are not attached to Jacques Vaughn anymore. They don't have KD Kyrie. He got a chance to run this team. He didn't do a great job. He didn't have a great roster, but either way, he didn't do
Yeah.
a great job. They move on. They get a new head coach. Um, Anything on the prior coaching stuff?
No, like you said, it was just kind of a saga.
It was
That
big
whole thing didn't really
carousel.
work out. Yeah, big carousel. No one really, matched the description for Kyrie and KD, and then the Nets were left with the aftermath of it, of the coaching saga when those players left too,
Yeah,
with a guy
so
that didn't really fit the scheme.
and then you know, based on the numbers here, 23rd in offensive rating at 113.2, 26th in defensive rating at 116.1, a -3 net rating, 22nd in the league. The on-court product was not good. To you know, put it in the most basic way that we can, it was the top of the bottom half, which
Yeah,
is technically where you don't want to be in the NBA. You want to be either at the top or you want to be at the bottom. You don't want to be in the middle. Um, Talking more specifically about their offense, they were 29th in transition offense, not getting their easy buckets the way they should. Transition or In the half court setting, 24th in pick and roll ball handler efficiency, but they ran at the fourth highest frequency, 21st percentile. Not very good with their guards operating in the pick and roll. Roll man stuff, 14th in roller efficiency, 25th frequency, still decent, 55th percentile. You're you have something to work with there. Even more to work with here, 8th in post up efficiency, but the least frequent running of post offense in the NBA. Still 86th percentile because they were so efficient running it. But their most effective offensive half court strategy they didn't run at all. So, and then one that they did run a lot, 8th frequency in isolation, 20th in ISO efficiency, 35th percentile. Not good. So the stuff that they were not good at, they ran a lot, and the stuff that they did seem pretty good at, they barely ran. And when I say barely, I went to NBA.com to look at it. They maybe had like 100 overall post-up attempts.
Yeah, just listening to those numbers, the pick and roll numbers make sense to me at least because if you look at the guards that were running that pick and roll, Spencer Dinwiddie, definitely at the end of his career. I hate Spencer Dinwiddie so much as a Wizards fan, but besides the point, obviously not a great point guard that you want handling your pick and roll offense. And then you have Cam Thomas, who's another point guard that came off the bench to help, and like 3 assists per game as a point guard is kind of like crazy. I'm gonna get into that later, but they just didn't have really great guys running that pick and roll offense, and then the isolation. Obviously, you had Mikal Bridges, so it makes a lot of. He was their guy. I think they like to run that a lot, was just giving Mikal the ball and letting him work. That post up stuff is interesting. I think that's just how good Nick Claxton is. He's just a beast in the offense and around the rim. Yeah, that's all I got on that.
Yeah, so I mean, looking back at how their offense was unsuccessful, Mikal's their number one scoring guy. He's probably a little overtasked there, and
Yeah.
running straight up spread pick and roll and isolation is not his strength on the offensive side. Um, Basically, all of the easy baskets that he got in Phoenix were they were cut down a lot because he either had the ball or there was a bad playmaker with the ball. Um, so the effectiveness of their best guy was not maximized. That remains consistent with a lot of the team here, and like you mentioned, Cam Thomas doing a lot of point guard reps, I think, is a catalyst for some non-maximization for sure, and we'll definitely get into CT for sure. Other offensive stuff, 12th in offensive rebounding, pretty solid. They're getting a couple extra possessions there. 19th in 3-point percentage, 9th in 3-point attempts. An alright shooting team. 25th in pull-up 3 percentage, and then 15th in pull-up 3 attempts. They're doing it a decent amount, and they're not that good at it. Again, you can look at their roster. They didn't have a lot of great pull-up shooters. So, a lot of the guys who were taking those pull-up shots, Dennis Schroeder, Cam Thomas, Spencer Dinwiddie, a lot of guys who you maybe don't want taking those higher difficulty reps. You got anything else on the offensive side?
Like you said, I mean, those guys are great pull-up shooters, but especially when you talk about Cam Thomas and Dennis Schroeder, they're very inconsistent. One day they'll be like 5 for 5 from three, and the next day they'll be terrible. Saw that a lot with Cam Thomas. So I mean, like you said, those are not the guys you want taking the pull-up shots. Um, they were just doing a lot of things that they were bad at, and they were doing that the most. And I think you said that before, but
Yeah, just a lot of stuff that they were not good at, and they were just doing it.
it's hurting themselves really.
Yeah, they would keep digging the hole deeper. From They would go down 5 points from shooting dumb shots and getting outscored on the other end, and then they would try to dig themselves out of that hole by doing the same thing. Not a great we'll get into the scheme stuff, but maybe there just kind of wasn't a scheme around this team, is
Yeah.
what I'm getting to. On the defensive side, like we said, their defensive rating was not good. 24th in transition defense. Not good stuff, but the rest of this doesn't look very good either on defense. 18th in pick and roll ball handler defense, 17th frequency, not bad. 41st percentile. On the other side, 26th in roller defense, but at least they prevented it a lot. Only 30th frequency, which is the least frequent attacked. Still 14th percentile because they were not good at it, but they at least prevent roller attempts in the pick and roll, which is pretty good considering they weren't too bad at guarding ball handlers in the pick and roll. 16th in post-up defense, 5th frequency, 48th percentile. This is workable. What's not workable is 24th in ISO defense, and people knew that they sucked at it. Highest frequency, 21st percentile. On the boards, 19th in defensive rebounding. Anything specific on the defense here?
Not really. I mean, they just had the pick and roll stuff makes sense because Claxton's just locked down in the paint. And then, I mean, I think a lot of it's like we talked about in the past with bad defenses, some bad defenses, is kind of just the guys they have aren't fit to play good defense, like individually.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my thing. I just don't think they have the good enough defenders. That's why they sucked on ISO.
Yeah,
because they just couldn't guard them.
Yeah,
straight up.
Isolation is where you'll really see what teams have the great individual defenders because
Yep.
I mean, typically they can attack the weakest link, but teams with the best individual defenders will typically be the better isolation defenders. And then you can even team defense stuff. They didn't defend a lot of the other half court concepts well either. Interestingly enough, Claxton, I do want to highlight here, really switchable, and I think there is a lot to build on a defense with Claxton at the helm of it. And when KD and Kyrie were still here a year ago, they had a really good defense, primarily built around Claxton and Kevin Durant being able to at least be 7 feet tall, right?
Yeah.
They didn't have a guy who could fill in and be 7 feet tall here while not destroying the team on offense. I think Jog Vaughn had the quote about Ben Simmons where it was like, you like having him out there on defense, but you can't play him next to Nick Claxton on offense at all.
Yeah.
I think, clearly they would wish Ben Simmons was Ben Simmons, but yeah, they don't have the personnel right now to build a good defense around Nick Claxton, but I think that it is definitely possible to build a great defense around Nicholas Claxton.
No, yeah, 100% agree. He had 2.1 blocks per game last season. I think we were talking about Rudy Gobert back when Quinn Snyder had Rudy Gobert, that defensive anchor. That's what Nick Claxton can be. That guy that's just so pulverizing that it makes the guys that people don't want to go into the paint. So if you have those guys that can play good iso ball, it makes it's hard to score from anywhere. Then, like you said, they just don't have those guys. They don't have a Ben Simmons. If Ben Simmons was good at offense, I think it would be great. I think they could build around it, but
they don't have their wing who is 6'10", who can guard perimeter players and can guard centers when you need them to. Right?
100%.
They have their Bam Adebayo. They don't have their Jimmy Butler. I think
Yep.
that's what you can take away from maybe even with some of the personnel stuff. Like Bridges is a decent defender, Schroeder's a decent defender, but they don't have this stuff that meshes together. It right now feels like they're putting a square block in a circular hole, basically, is how it, the fit isn't there. We'll get into how they can make the fit here in the scheme section. Looking through the lineup stuff, A lot of it I just kind of threw out because they're not going to have the same coach. They're not going to have a lot of the same players. Um, it was a lot of wing stuff. It was three wings, a guard, and Claxton a lot of the time. How this will change with the new coaching regime, I'm not sure. With new players, I'm not sure. We're going to find out. New head coach, Jordi Fernandez. I This is an interesting hire, right? Because he definitely wasn't towards the top of uh, the Instagram head coaches available list.
Yeah.
However, what I think makes this really interesting, we had mentioned before with their post ups being one of their better half court offensive sets. Jordi Fernandez comes from the Denver Nuggets and the Sacramento Kings as his primary coaching background. Um, he also brings Connor Griffin over from Denver and Dividas Delays over from Sacramento. So he's bringing over from these coaching staffs that prioritize Domantas Sabonis and Nikola Jokic as post-up ability and their playmaking ability. I think this is a good hire based on what they did well last season and retaining Claxton. We might see a little bit more out of Claxton on the offensive side this season. You have anything on Fernandez or lineups or anything?
Yeah, I was just gonna bring up the fact that he came from Sacramento and Denver. Also, he was Team Canada's head coach this
Mm-hmm.
year. So I don't know. I guess that means that he can coach. I think because Canada did okay. I think they made like the quarterfinals.
Yeah, they lost to France. Uh,
So yeah.
yeah. Interestingly, France, I believe Kenny Atkinson is their head coach. I think
Oh really?
we had brought
Huh.
him up earlier, um, or he's at least on that staff. Um, yeah, maybe that means they signed some Canadian players. I'm not sure if that's a great expectation to have, but yeah, certainly I think at the very least Fernandez will implement some post up. Uh,
Oh
he'll
yeah,
at
for
least
sure.
prioritize it in the offense, which is what they were at least in low volume very good at last season, and maybe this unlocks a little bit more from Claxton on offense. Um, Scheme stuff based on what they did in Sacramento, they played a lot of drop with Sabonis. I think Claxton's a much better defender than Sabonis. Um, Jokic, couldn't they played a lot to the level of the screen with in Denver. I would imagine they do a little bit of that with Claxton, a little bit of drop, and probably even some switching stuff. Just because I think you can get really creative with Nicholas Claxton on defense. So, anything you have on the defensive side of the scheme?
Nothing really on the defensive side. You pretty much covered it all. And like you said, I think Nick Claxton's versatility kind of makes this Nets team scary defensively. But there's definitely some weak points to attack.
Yeah, certainly. And like at this point right now, maybe they do have the big center point of the puzzle, but
Yeah.
they don't have the corners right now. You know, so we're there's probably not much expectations we can place on this defense. Maybe even stylistically, we shouldn't expect it to play a certain way, just because they don't have the pieces yet
Yeah.
whatsoever. So if we're done with scheme and stuff, we can go forward to the off season. Very key part of the off season here, the Nets draft. They made some great picks. They selected nobody. So
Oh. Yeah, me tripping for a second. I was like, I thought that. Yeah.
they didn't have a pick in this draft. I
Yep.
think it went to Phoenix. Um, yeah, no draft picks. We'll get into their future draft pick situation next. Additions and subtractions for this offseason. They brought in Bojan Bogdanovic. They signed Shake Milton. This was added into the Mikal Bridges trade. Milton for 9 million over 3 seasons. They brought in Zaire Williams on a flyer. I forgot the exact. They might have just given up a second round pick to Memphis for
Yeah.
Zaire, I believe. They just, I mean, it's a stereotypical flyer that you have to take on guys when you're starting a rebuild. So good stuff. Anything on Bogey, Milton, or Zaire Williams before we move to resigns and subtractions?
I think Bogey was a big sign for them. 3-point and mid range specialist. I like to say, 37% from three last year. He averaged 10.4 points per game, and he got traded to a good Knicks team where he was coming off the bench and actually gave him some pretty solid. I mean, he wasn't as good as he was in the first half of the season, but he still gave him solid production off the bench. And obviously, he's not Mikal Bridges. I'm not saying that, but I think this is kind of the guy they're going to bring in to fill that small forward kind of role. At least that's just my opinion. I like Bogey a lot.
I do as
Obviously
well.
his defense is terrible, but
Yeah, and I don't think he was actually too bad on defense. He's 6'7". He's at least a little bit big. You look what he was for the Knicks last year. He was kind of their second best offensive player in the playoffs.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
it was like, dang, if Brunson's not on the court, you kind of need Bogey out there. Which sounds crazy, but that was the state of the hospital Knicks.
yeah,
Um, yeah, Bogey. He on the Pistons last season. I believe he averaged like 21 a game.
yeah,
I would imagine he does very similar here on Brooklyn. If you look at what the Pistons got in return for Bogey, they got Quentin Grimes and a second round pick, or multiple seconds, I believe.
hmm
I think if you're Brooklyn, you would really like to get that type of a return again this trade deadline, which I think they could. Um, Interestingly, when Bogey was traded last year, his deal was non-guaranteed for this season, but the Knicks picked it up so they could trade for Mikal Bridges. So I don't think his trade value will actually change whatsoever compared to what it was last season at the deadline.
okay,
So yeah, that's all I got here. Shake Milton is, I don't even know if he's worth the 9 million over 3. He's kind of, for his career, he's like this fifth guard.
yeah. He was good. I liked him on the 76ers.
Yeah,
Whenever he was on the 76ers, he was pretty good, but now it's
he's
kind of
just the
fizzled
fifth
out.
guard. He was thrown into
Yeah,
the trade for cap reasons.
yeah,
It's whatever. Zaire, I didn't really like him in the draft when he went. Well, I didn't. I wouldn't say I didn't like him. I just didn't like him as high as Memphis took him in the draft a couple years ago. It hasn't panned out, and I think it's for the reasons that you could have guessed when he got drafted. It's just he doesn't actually play defense that well, and he doesn't actually shoot it that well. So he doesn't. He's not really a complimentary player next to other great offensive players like Morant.
yeah. I think this is just like you said, Flyer. You get him because he has good upside. I mean, he has scoring and playmaking upside. He just hasn't been able to show it. Um, yeah, that's
Yeah,
really. I think they're taking him, and then if he turns out to be the guy that Memphis drafted, that they get it for a steal, and if not, no harm, no foul.
yeah, and they're probably taking him hoping that he's their 6'8" wing to play
Yeah,
next to Clax. Speaking of Clax, he signed an extension, 97 million over 4 seasons. The AAV on this deal is already really good. It's under 25 a season. Then you factor in the fact that this contract descends over time. It gets it's less expensive. I think this is a great deal for the Nets to do. I think this is an A+ signing for sure.
yeah.
Um,
I mean,
you know,
to get it for that amount of money per year is crazy,
you're
especially
get
Claxton.
you're
That's
getting like
that's
a top
crazy.
7 center. Um, put it in comparison to Hartenstein, who just signed. He got 29 a season. Claxton got less than 24.
Yeah,
I mean,
Claxton's
I think
years
Hartenstein
above
is.
Hardenstein.
Uh, I think he's a little bit better, but
Hardenstein's good.
I think they're
Don't get
about
me
the same.
wrong.
I think they're
I
about the
think
same.
Claxton just can score better, and is better defensively.
I agree. I think he's definitely a better scorer. And he's better at a lot of aspects of defense too.
Yeah, Hartenstein ain't no bum now.
Yeah. Other re-sign, I didn't actually know he was on the Nets before, but they re-signed him. Keon Johnson. This was a guy who I actually did like a couple seasons ago. Second round pick. I believe he may have broken the vertical record. I believe he has like a 50-inch vertical.
Damn.
I'll actually pull it up. Last season in the G League, he shot 39% on 5 attempts a game in the G League from 3. He had a 48-inch vertical leap, and I believe he is like 6'6".
Damn.
He's like he's a solid 6'4". Okay. Either way, 2 guard, really athletic. He could shoot the 3 a little bit. Hopefully, this is a guy who could step in for them next season. The contract they gave him, a 1+1 or a 2-year deal, the second year being a club option for the league minimum. This is the cheapest flyer you can take on a player, and I think it is a really good player too. He hasn't gotten really a chance in the NBA yet. I think he was with Portland for a little bit. He played in the G League for them. I could see this one turning some dividends for them.
Yeah, like I said earlier, they're just re-signing guys. You get a guy on a cheap contract, 2 years, club option. So like no harm, no foul, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of upside, So good signing.
Yeah. Additionally, for them, after this season, they'll have 50+ million in cap space for next offseason. Maybe that doesn't mean they go star hunting, but maybe that is they bring in some significant veterans. I think they did fine. We'll go over the subtractions. They lost Jacob Gilyard, so that's a big piece for them. Not really, but they lost Lonnie Walker. It's Lonnie Walker. He's fine, right? Dennis Smith Jr. He actually did seem like a pretty good guard last season, but if you look at some of the problems they had, I think he was actually a contributor to their problems on offense. And even though you could say he's a pretty good defensive player, they still weren't that good at pick and roll defense from point of attack or isolation. So not really sure if that's a big loss for them. Keita Bates-Diop ended up getting thrown in the Bridges trade. 6'8", can kind of shoot. He had been on the Spurs teams for a little bit. He ended up on the Suns before they traded him for Royce O'Neal. All of these so far have been minor subtractions. Then you get to the major one. I'm sure we're going to talk about this one for a long time. Mikal Bridges, gone in return for Bogey, Shake Milton. 5 first-round picks. Damn. What do you have on Bridges?
Well, he was their team last year, and ever since he got traded to Brooklyn, he's been, I think a fan favorite, especially with his celebration. 19.6 points per game last year. You get 37% from the 3-point line. I mean, he was an insane player. We're going to talk about it a lot more when we get to the next episode, but huge loss, and it's now very indicative that the Nets are blowing everything up, going full rebuild mode, and it's kind of nice to see after being so mid for 5-6 years. But yeah, I think they're in full rebuild mode after trading Bridges. 5 first-round picks is a great return. Getting Bojan, great return, because even if you don't have him next year, you're definitely going to get some more picks from him. So yeah.
Yeah, with these picks, they're every other season from the Knicks. They didn't get any of the Knicks' 24 picks.
Okay.
Which, it's a weak draft. I assume that was on purpose. Yeah, they also get a Milwaukee pick, I think, in one season. So 4 Knicks picks and a Milwaukee pick. And I believe one of the picks is protected a little bit, but it's very likely that they are going to get all 5 of those picks. Um, other stuff that we have on the Nets. There have been league trades around the Nets in the past, with specifically around Bridges. The big one that I think made a lot of headlines just because of what happened like shortly after. The Rockets had offered the Nets picks back and Jalen Green. Would you have rather had those 3 Nets picks and Jalen Green, or the return that they got from the Knicks?
Well, I mean, Jalen Green. Or was that KPG that got in trouble? KPJ that
No,
got
no,
in
no.
trouble.
That was
Oh,
KPJ.
Jalen Green did get in
No,
trouble.
that was KPJ.
Oh no, Jalen Green's chilling.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, honestly, you have Cam Thomas.
Yeah, I think they're kind of the same player, but
I,
definitely get into
I
it.
think, yeah. Like, I honestly like. I think that they did the right decision. Holding out ended up paying off for them. So yeah, I would go with the bogey plus the pick package over Jalen Green.
Yeah. And then Memphis, I believe, had offered 3 unprotected picks.
Straight up for Mikal.
Yeah, there would have been like Luke Kennard and another salary filler in there too, but that was.
I mean, I think with Bogey, you kind of replace Mikal. I say
Yeah,
kind of because he's nowhere near the level of Mikal, but he's like he can play the same or he can fill that small forward role. He's obviously not as versatile, but he has that scoring ability. So
yeah.
I'm still rocking with the Bogey
And
package.
I think for what they're asked to do, I don't think he's actually that much worse offensively compared to Mikal. Now, if you're talking about next to another star player, I think Mikal is significantly better
Yeah,
on the offensive side. But if they're just asked to initiate offense, I think Bogey's maybe 90% of what Mikal is in that role. So, I mean, obviously you're losing everything on defense, but and then of course some of it is too they're gonna trade Bogey. Another leaked trade for them was they had been offered 2 picks, 2 first-round picks
okay.
for Dorian Finney-Smith.
Oh, I would do that. Oh, I
Yeah,
don't know. I think I would do that.
yeah,
I think I would do that. I would do that. I say I don't know because Dorian. This is ridiculous, but Dorian Finney-Smith is like a fringe starter for them. So like, but I would do it. I mean, you're in rebuild mode. Yeah, I'm doing it. I'm doing it.
yeah. And then
When was this? When was this
this was, I
offered?
think, around the deadline. This had been leaked, and I don't know if it was revealed what team had offered this, and what's very likely to be the case is some team had offered 2 picks. Maybe they were late picks and had some protections on them, and the Nets were like, "Hey, let's put it out there that
Mhm.
this is what's out there for us, and we want to boost the price of Dorian Finney-Smith." But
I would have took that.
since it was reported this way as 2 picks, maybe it was 2 not valuable picks, and they reported it this way, and it just probably scared a
Yeah,
bunch of teams off.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. That's crazy.
yeah, I'm gonna have to say that it probably wasn't the case that they were giving 2 picks straight up.
Like, yeah, yeah. Oh wow.
However, you do that every time, I think. So
Yeah.
all right. Moving forward, unless you have anything else on their addition subtractions.
Nope.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty straight up with what they did. All right,
Yep.
looking up at any data that we have here, specifically, or let's go into the other trade they made. Right after they made the Bridges trade, they trade 2 Phoenix picks to Houston for their own picks back. For 2 of their own picks back. Their 25 pick, which is this year's, and then I think their 27 pick.
Are they first or seconds or
Their first round picks, and then
their
for
first round
the
picks?
25 and
Okay.
27 Suns picks. If you're just looking at it from a front office perspective, I think that's a slam dunk A plus right there. You get control of your own picks back, which allows you to actually do this tank job. I
The right way.
Yeah, I think the real conversation around this is in the Rockets episode.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we'll definitely get to this move a little bit more in the Rockets episode now that I think about it. But I thought
Okay.
that was worth bringing up because now the Nets actually have the luxury to go full rebuild mode because they have control of almost all of their picks. Um, Other stuff, of course, we had brought up post ups. We expect Claxton's stuff to increase. Claxton and Dayron Sharp both had efficient post up numbers. It's just they never did it. Claxton, I think he does have some passing to tap into, which I think is pretty key for this, you know, Jokic Sabonis type system. Um, yeah, anything else you have here? Because I do have a little bit of data that I've recently pulled up.
I mean, I think if Claxton wants to assume that role, he really needs to improve his shot. Um, Especially just kind of like moving out. Like even if he can get the mid range going, I mean, his 3 pointer, I don't think it's going to make huge jumps. Really, I think it was like 20% or something. Also, his free throw shooting is like 55%,
Yeah, it's
which
really bad.
is which is terrible. Especially when you can be a big center. If you want to post up, you're going to get fouled. You can if you know hit him with that little pump fake, get the contact, go up. Teams don't really mind having that happen if you shoot 55% from the free throw line. So I think just overall, like you said, if he wants to, like you said, the Sabonis Jokic, just a big thing for him is just maybe improving the shot a little bit.
Or at least improve the free throws. I think
Yeah,
because otherwise it
I think
does
yeah,
become an inefficient. Maybe not inefficient, but you're missing a good bit there of this offense.
yep, yep.
Stuff that I did bring up here. Um, if you look at these bad teams generally, they're always going to be the whole team has negative net ratings. Um, just general look, Mikal Bridges negative 3.7, Nick Claxton negative 7, Cam Johnson negative 2. These are some of their better players. You had brought him up earlier, and like I know he's a polarizing player because he's kind of he's one of the most explosive scorers in this age right now. But when Cam Thomas is off the floor, Mikal Bridges' net rating jumped up 2 points. Nicholas Claxton's jumped up 3 points. Cam Johnson's jumped up 4 points. Royce O'Neal had a significant positive net rating when Cam Johnson was off the court. When Cam Johnson was not necessarily off the court, but just overall, Royce O'Neal was a negative player. He saw a 6 point jump when Cam Johnson was off the court. Anything that you
This
can
is
see to make of
this is
this?
Johnson or Thomas.
Cam Thomas.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, so most of their
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
significant players got better when Cam Thomas was off.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a thing that we alluded to a little bit in the beginning. And if you watch Nets games or if you just watch Cam Thomas, um, and a lot of the things he gets knocked for, first off is the shot selection. I mean, when he gets hot, he likes to do a lot of heat checks and he shoots a lot of, kind of very questionable shots and his playmaking is really bad. 2.9 assists per game. Why do you not make people better? Because you can't play make. I think when he gets the ball, he's young. He wants to go into takeover mode, like you said. One of the more explosive players in the game. He's a great 3 level scorer. He can hit it from three. He can hit from inside. He can go up on bigger centers. He can score from the mid range. He's confident. But he doesn't have like a team mindset. I feel like. I would say. I
Yeah,
feel like it's a very me kind of mindset, and that's why all those numbers do not shock me at all.
and then this has happened before in the past. There, the predictions around Cam Thomas is, hey, the team is now it's him, right? The offense is probably going to be him. He's going to average 34 points a game, right? Like those takes exist.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
We
yeah.
saw this happen with Jordan Poole. These guys who already take bad shots with good players around them are going to now take a lot of even worse shots with bad players around them. I think in order to be the main point of an offense, you have to have efficient scoring game, and you have to be a really good passer. You look at basically every number one option on decent offenses. There's a lead scorer who's efficient, and then he's also a good passer. Cam Thomas might not be either of those. His efficiency was kind of impressive for the shot types he takes. He takes a lot of bad
Yeah.
shots, but he also makes a lot of bad shots. Him in the on-ball scorer role, I don't think works.
So my thing is, what if you put Schroeder as that point guard and then move him to the two? Because
so
Schroeder's six assists per game. That he's not really looking to get it right now.
Yeah, they certainly need to have Schroeder running point guard. I mean, just looking at the numbers, they gave Cam Johnson almost $100 million. He could not play with Cam Thomas because Cam Thomas just can't pass.
Yeah.
Like, these are guys who are really good NBA players that are really good NBA players that are not playing well because of this guy here who likes to take 360 mid-range shots. Like, I don't know. I feel like it's a
But like it's 2K.
Yeah. And I mean, he's a great mixtape player, and he's gonna have these Instagram posts about him. It's like, man, 2024 Nets tanking Nets. Cam Thomas was nice.
Yeah.
And then you look at the advanced numbers, and you're like, damn, they sucked with him on the court, though. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't even think it's just the defense. I think you could be perfectly fine if he doesn't play defense. I just don't think he's a good enough offensive player to be the piece.
His defense isn't even all that good, if we're being honest, too.
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, but I think you can get away with that if the offense is actually good.
Yeah, we'll talk about it more with the line, like kind of the lineup prediction for next year. But I think you hit the nail on the head, 100%. He's not maximizing everybody's best.
He's
abilities.
A great losing player.
Yeah.
I mean, he's the team's gonna lose by 12, but Cam's gonna have 34. He's gonna have 3 assists. He'll have 2.5 turnovers somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll just get into like some of the lineup stuff. Like you said, I think we both think Schroeder will start at point guard.
Yeah.
What they do at backup point guard, I guess it's Shake Milton. Unless it's Ben Simmons.
I mean, and maybe even
Cam.
I don't know. I don't want to say it, but Killian Hayes is he more of like a wing?
Talk about a tank leader.
I mean, yeah, it's crazy. I don't know. The Nets are in a bad. It worries me. It makes my head hurt looking at this. How poor, how this roster is just terrible.
Yeah.
But yeah. So Cam or Dennis, and then Shake Milton. You think?
Probably.
Then Ben.
Probably. If you look at the centers, I don't think are bad. They have
Claxton.
They have Day'Ron Sharpe, and they have Noah Clowney. I don't think that's bad.
So who starts? I think so. The Kings last year, they would run Monk and Herter, Kevin Herter.
Yeah.
They ran that 2-guard lineup. You think Cam Thomas starts alongside Schroeder?
Uh, yeah,
Could you see him coming off? Yeah,
yeah. I think he just
I
will.
have him. I have Cam Thomas going at the 2, and then Schroeder at the 1.
All right, here's what I think the best not cancelario situation is for Cam. He
Mm-hmm.
ends up in that Malik Monk role. I think is the
Mm-hmm.
best thing for
Coming
him.
off the bench.
Being maybe their third best offensive player off the bench, and interestingly, Malik is a pretty good passer anyway. But I hope that Jordy Fernandez can maybe mold Cam into that role because I think that is a role that he could play in the NBA. Cam Thomas or Cam Johnson and Dorian Finney-Smith. I think those are your obvious starting wings. Good NBA players.
I have Bojan over Dorian. I had Bojan. I had Cam Johnson though. I do have Cam Johnson. I
Yeah,
agree with that. I think Bojan's just better offensively than Dorian Finney-Smith. But I mean, I, I can see Dorian Finney-Smith being there. I just think Bojan's going to be there because they just did the big trade that he was involved in, and it was one of their best players.
yeah,
Um, I can see him starting.
I could
That's
too.
just what I had though.
Maybe.
I think they're interchangeable.
I mean, it is going to be a wing-heavy lineup, but maybe it's Cam Thomas or Cam Johnson, Dorian, and Boyan could be a lineup they run a little bit with Cam off the
And then
bench.
have Cam. Yeah. See, that's what I when you were bringing that up, talk about Malik Monk. I was thinking they probably go 3 wing
It's
and
just
then
I'm not
have
sure if that starting lineup scores or defends, but I think that's
yeah.
just the
That's
pickle
the
that
thing.
they're in as the Brooklyn
Yeah.
Nets. Um, yeah. Other than those things, I'm. I mean, I'm a little excited for Keon Johnson to get NBA time, but yeah. Other than that, they have Dariq Whitehead and Clowney, who were first rounders a year ago, who didn't play at all last year, really. Um, you hope you see something out of them. Other than that, not too. Yeah, there's not much else with their lineups that I'm too interested in. What about you?
Yeah. I think all we got is the offense, defense, and X factor stuff.
Yeah, for sure. The offensive MVP. What do you got?
This is hard because like I had the offensive player of the year and X factor. I was toying with a lot, but I just went with Cam Thomas. I think Cam Thomas is just gonna just do what he does and shoot, just shoot, shoot, shoot.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I think this is probably going to be one of the three worst offenses next year.
Okay.
Um, I think what I think is likely to happen. I think their offensive MVP is going to be Cam Johnson. Uh,
Really? Wow.
I don't
Okay.
think maybe he's. I don't think he's really going to put up a ton of points, but he's a legitimate elite shooter. And I think with what everything's brought on the offensive end, I think the floor spacing he provides is probably the most valuable individual asset that anybody on this team brings on the offensive side. And I don't think it's really that close.
Yeah, I like that. Like you said, he can stretch the floor really well. Elite shooter. It was 39% from three, which is really good. He averaged 13 points per game.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I think if he becomes more consistent, we're going to see those numbers jump.
And then
But
also after the Brooklyn trade, in his first season, he was a lot closer to 20 points a game as well. Um,
oh, okay, yeah,
with him, it's health. Is he healthy? And that being said, this is one of the worst offenses in the league. The offensive MVP is not going to be very good on this team. So
yeah, yeah,
defensive side, I think we both have Clax.
100%.
Yeah. Um, who'd you have for X Factor?
So there's 2 guys I was going with. I'm gonna tell you who it is. I'm gonna tell you the other guy I was thinking.
Okay.
But I think I had Cam Johnson. Just not as the offense. I think the X factor. I think if he just can come in and do what he did last year and be an elite shooter and a good defender, maybe step those defensive numbers up a little bit. He can really help this Nets team
Yeah.
as much as help. But And the other guy I was thinking of putting in there was Dennis Schroeder. Uh, it's kind of weird, but I like his playmaking ability he brings. I think that he doesn't have a crazy offensive year, but he helps guys like Cameron Johnson, Nick Claxton, um, even Cam Thomas to have big games if they let him run the ball at point. And Schroeder can also shoot the ball a little bit, so that's why I mean it's 41% from three last year. It was only in 29 games, but I don't know. I think that it's hard to put an X factor for this team, but those are the two I kind of liked.
Yeah, and you had brought up Cam. I think the thing with Cam is on the defensive side, he's definitely a guard, your second best player type of guy, and he's probably going to be asked to guard the best player a lot more than he should. But I think he does bring some on that end, and I think he does bring a lot on offense. My X factor I had was Cam Thomas. Um,
Okay, yep.
it's just, does he play the role of a good NBA player, or is he, like your your mixtape player, that kind of thing. I think that's the one thing that could really swing this team a lot. Um, yeah, you got anything on that end?
No, I mean I was gonna go Cam Thomas, but I was like I literally don't know who else would be offensive player.
Yeah,
So that's why I went. That's why I didn't go him. But I wanted to put him at X Factor for all the reasons you just said. So
yeah, certainly. And then we're at that point of the podcast. Predictions. What do we think about the Nets here for this next season?
I
Did
think they're
they?
gonna be worse than last year.
Yeah, I think the team definitely got worse. I don't think
Yeah,
that's necessarily for the bad of the organization, but they definitely got worse. Um, we'll see in the Indiana episode where we end up breaking them, but my guess is it's going to be towards the very bottom of the Eastern Conference.
yeah, yep.
Yeah. So, any closing notes from you, or we gonna wrap it up here?
No, I I don't got anything else to say.
Yeah. I mean, maybe a little bit of a negative podcast, but we have to say it how it is. Not
Yeah,
really
this.
looking like a good season coming up for the Nets.
Yep.
So that should wrap it up for today. This is the Nets podcast. The next one will be the Knicks, coming out in 2 days from now. I'm your host, Patrick McDonald, co-host Sean Kaufman. We're gonna see y'all in the next one.